Welcome back, Michelle.
Wait,
Welcome back.
can you hear me now?
Yeah, welcome back, Michelle.
Oh, thank you, Dale. Nice to be
Uh,
back.
Yeah, great to hear your voice. So, how are you?
I'm just great.
I know that tone of voice. Okay, so I mean, I was wondering. Well, first of all, let's get you to share the screen with the green
Yes,
button.
I'm just doing this right now. So let
So I,
me.
I I was commenting that it's really difficult to be a position trader. That you almost have to take it when you have it. Like yesterday, if you went home with the way things closed, you're giving a lot back. It's almost like there's a new trading technique, Michelle. Buy the ugliest closes possible, and you'll make money
It
because
does
there's no
seem
follow through.
right. Well, well, first of all, there's been a pattern ever since Trump has been in office, which is to create a problem that doesn't really exist and then come back and fix that problem that didn't really exist so that you look like a hero. Excuse me. Think I need a little sip
I
of coffee after
no,
that.
no, but I think you've described it perfectly. So,
Well, I'm
how
a
do you?
chartist. You can chart
Yeah,
it. I mean, that's really basically, and so
interesting.
yesterday when he came out and said that the stimulus was off the table, I thought, okay, I'm not panicking here. This is definitely Trump. We just created a problem, and then probably within 24 hours, which is exactly what happened, I'm going to come out and say how I'm going to fix the problem.
Right.
So right now, the fact that they want to do it piecemeal in terms of the stimulus is not a bad solution, by the way, rather than try to go for the whole big thing.
Enchilada. Yeah.
Right, the whole enchilada. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, we'll see what happens on the Dem side. I mean, this has really been unfortunate for people who are really desperate for this money because they're in the middle of a political football game. Where actually some of the players have coronavirus. So just like real football. So
Boy, you're on top of your game today, Michelle. Anyway, okay.
well, what do
Yeah,
you do
it's
in this
true.
situation? You have to have a sense of humor. You have to
Yeah.
step back and you have to trade with a plan
You ever
with,
think of stand up?
oh,
Huh? It'd be great. I'd come to that show. Anyway, so yeah. So let me ask you this. So
mhm.
you have a sense of humor, but we trade to make money, and I want to know what you're seeing. And what's interesting? I know you're a big commodity bull,
Mhm.
and I'm going to guess that you're going to talk about grains today because they've been dynamic compared to softs. Well, is that a good prediction?
Yes, except for sugar as a soft has been exploding, which is something that you and I have talked about in the
Yeah,
past
yeah,
because most people aren't really familiar with the sugar market. But it is a very interesting little market because it seems to be sort of a secret bird's eye view into what's happening on the deflation inflation argument. And actually,
yeah.
let me put up a sugar chart while we're talking so you
Okay,
can
and I
see it.
don't want to get you off track with what you planned on talking about today too, but after sugar, you could just go back to what you had planned on
Well, I
talking
think
about.
I think that what we have to really talk about today is in terms of the actual market, the rotation that we started to see and are still
Yeah,
seeing, even with the comeback today, which I
yeah,
think actually is a market that is looking at the potential Biden win. And I am trying to say these things without any kind of political stance one way or another. That's not interesting or healthy to even come from that place. But to me, from just an
yeah,
observation, the rotation starting Friday, by the way, when Trump's illness got announced and the
yeah.
market sold off, what closed green? The Russell 2000,
Good point.
the the retail sector, the
Right.
transportation sector, and the regional banks and financial sector, which, by the
And the
way, are
fangs and MAGA haven't even recovered from Friday's highs.
right.
Don't they kind of look like they all have Head and Shoulders formations, Amazon, and all of those stocks that we could be building a right shoulder here?
It's very possible. I'm going to show you since we're skipped back. We'll go back to grains and sugar in a moment,
Okay.
but let's.
Okay.
So, by the way, 4 of those 6 that I just mentioned are part of my economic modern family.
Right.
And the reason why, for those who are not familiar with it, that I even created and called it the economic modern family is because these one index being the Russell 2000 and the 5 sectors, which would be retail, which of course has a lot of e-commerce in it, but also brick and mortar, the regional banks, the transportation, the semiconductors, and the biotechnology really are a huge part of the GDP in the United States and a much truer representation of what the US economy is doing, or what Mr. Druckenmiller called the inside of the market. Happily for me, I had created this family before I heard him say that, so it was an incredible affirmation. And I did it as a family, mostly for my own just way to follow it. I have characterizations of each one of these.
Yeah.
Which if I ever did that stand-up, Dale, I could do it in character of
You
each one of
you
these.
could you could do it
Yeah,
at financial summits.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
So, all right. So the
So,
family, what's the family saying here?
well, if these are the weekly charts, and I always like to look at the weekly charts because it sort of helps you step back a little bit. And if we just go here with the IWM, which for some reason is the only one that's in red and green candles, this is the 50-week moving average and the 200-week moving average. And you can see that the 50 is still under the 200 here.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the price is above all of them. And
Right.
we're heading into the February swoon price.
Yeah.
160 is definitely a good price to look at because that was that last low, January 31st, before we had the 1, 2, 3, one more attempt to go up as the SPY and the Qs were making new all-time highs. And if you recall, IWM was not. And then
Right.
boom, the drop and then the
Yeah.
swoon. So here we are right now into that area. So this is going to be very, very key. We're in an extremely interesting inflection point for the whole market, but particularly for the modern family. It's come back stronger than NASDAQ and SPY. Yes, and partly I think it's because the Biden win represents the fact that there'll be big taxes on these large corporations, and these are the small cap companies. Not that they won't probably pay more in taxes, but they represent more fiscal spending is also part of what the market might expect, which means perhaps finally some kind of an infrastructure type package. Certainly would help with people who need jobs, but that's practical, so we're going to
You
put
know,
that away.
Michelle, since you brought up taxes, I heard this, and it makes sense to me. You'd be surprised how many people take action based upon taxes. I tell the story that during the dot-com bubble, when it started to roll over, people would come to me and say, "Well, what do you think?" I said, "Well, why don't you just sell?" And they would say, "Oh no, I can't do that. I'd have too much capital gains tax exposure to have to pay." I said, "Well, you should be glad that you have capital gains." And they let it all slip away. So what I'm hearing now from a tax perspective is the FANGs and the MAGAs is where people have the biggest gains. And why not book it now before taxes go up, perhaps on capital gains, and rotate into what you're talking about? Does that make sense to you?
It does make sense. I think that it might be premature because we don't really know what's going to happen come
Yeah,
November.
yeah,
If it's
we
a
sure don't.
landslide, well, no, I mean, people are saying unless it's a landslide, most likely that the election could wind up being contested. That's
Yeah.
very possible. There's certainly been comments about that, so it's not like something I'm making up out of my head. And so I think you have to really, before you start absolutely planning for what is going to happen in terms of the next administration, just from a trading standpoint, obviously, if you've been long these big FANG stocks and these MAGA stocks forever, certainly we are in our NASDAQ All-Stars model still long a whole bunch of big stocks, but it's interesting. Our rotation has been more into stocks like Moderna, Zoom.
Yeah.
We're still in Tesla. So Moderna being actually, a medical stock. What else are we in? I forget.
Yeah,
But
I'm looking for 100 in Moderna. If you pull up Moderna, we have 2 drives on it, and it
mhm.
just, to me, the pattern looks incomplete, and it looks like we should see new highs for the third drive up there. And just from memory, I think it's around $100.
Right. So I think it would be smart anyway to start looking at what the rotation is going to count on the fact that the rotation is going into value stocks. If you're a short-term trader, the thing I'm most upset about yesterday is I wanted to get into a bunch of things with the swoon at the end of the day prevented me from doing it. For example, I really wanted to get into a couple of stocks that are more cannabis based, which of course started to rally when Trump got sick, starting early this week. Why? Because of a Biden administration. They figure it might be friendlier to the final legalization of marijuana, or at least not so restrictive if it doesn't actually get through. And by the way, to me, the president is only one real small factor. It's going to be the Senate. I think that's
You're
going to be
right. I never
extremely
knew how
important.
powerful the Senate was until this point in my life and watching this.
Well, McConnell might be the most powerful person right now
Yeah.
in
He's kind
and
of like how James Baker was, that
mhm,
ran the government. McConnell's really the president.
absolutely. And it was McConnell I read today that had said to Trump, we should just stop the negotiations on the stimulus until afterwards.
Hmm.
So, and then probably Trump got smacked around a little bit by Mnuchin and Powell, and it's like, what? No, that's not what you want to do. Not very popular for you
He did
getting
it right
reelected.
after Powell was hat in hand saying we need stimulus the same day.
Yeah, yeah, it was interesting, and and like I said, I didn't get us out of any of our positions. It certainly, made me get out of my chair and go, "What?" But, but nonetheless, it did prevent me from getting along a bunch of stuff that I wanted to look at yesterday, and also in the transportation sector. Interestingly enough, you've got all the airlines up early this morning, and
Yeah.
transportation. Let's just go back to the Modern Family here.
Okay.
Transportation, here's your IYT. This started leading. Look at when this actually started breaking out above its moving averages. Was here
Yeah.
back in late July, and really once this took out like that 190, it started to show leadership. And then you can see here this 200 level has been very pivotal. It's not quite made new all-time highs yet, but it's close. And don't forget, none of these, except for semiconductors and biotechnology more recently, have made new all-time highs, while the NASDAQ and the Qs kept going to new all-time highs during that period where it was just going up and then up and then up. These are still lagging. And that's why I think the most amusing thing of everything that comes out of the politics is how great the economy was before the pandemic. If you look here, not so great. So now, as I said, to me, what's so fascinating is the market is starting to get some real optimism, of course, after yesterday, and who knows, any tweet can come out and kind of kill the rally, at least from a temporary standpoint. But IYT is strong. IBB, obviously, with vaccines, I think if there was any silver lining out of Trump's illness, whether he's recovered fully or not, is that some of those medications have gotten attention and could potentially work. Not that anybody could probably afford, certainly the treatment that he had, but it's been very, very much the rush for a vaccine, the rush to try to create drugs that help with the symptoms. And then 140 here in IBB is going to be big. It's been flirting with it, so it's got to hold around this 134, 135. This actually did make new all-time highs in July, and what's interesting about that is that it hadn't made all-time highs since 2015. So biotech woke up a little bit.
Is that the
And
same case with trannies? I mean, because the Dow theory guys, when the trannies were weak, were saying, we're getting Dow theory sells. Maybe they're going to get a Dow theory buy with what the trannies are doing.
absolutely, Dale. This is exactly what I'm trying to say, is that we're
Okay.
seeing now the rotation. If we take a look at a monthly chart here on the trans, here's your all-time high. Was
Yeah, it's
back in
been a few years.
2018,
Yeah.
right? In
Right.
September,
Yeah.
almost 2 years ago. And we're tackling it. I mean, maybe it's easier to show everybody this way instead of looking at it one by one. If we go to IWM, here's the Trump swoon, but we were tackling 160 right here. So you can see how important that is on a weekly basis. We're above the 23-month here. If we go to XRT, which also started to show some leadership, XRT all-time high, also August 2018, 52.96. We got to, oh no, we made a new all-time high in retail this week. Look at that. Well, not this week, but in August. Right.
Yeah.
And now these are monthly charts. Look at this. We're having an inside month, another inside month. This to me does not look bearish. That doesn't mean that couldn't change, but right now it doesn't look bearish. And then IBB.
Oh, and I have one question before I forget from an attendee. Jane would like to know which cannabis stocks you like.
Oh, okay. That's a good one. Well, first of all, I think one of the strongest ones is Grow Generation. And right now you can see it's been consolidating really pretty much between 14 and 18. You can really see it clearly here on the weekly chart. I think right now you're sort of right smack dab in the middle, although it's coming higher. It's going to in the choppy zone, probably if you just waited now for a close above 18. That would probably be the most conservative way to look at it from a more swing position. And then you could probably get out, risk a couple of dollars and see if it can hold around that 15, 16 level. But also Tilray, I was watching Tilray the other day because it made a huge reversal pattern and then sold off yesterday and now is coming up. But really the stock that we've made money in this year, believe it or not, was CGC, Canopy Growth. We caught this move up, got out, have watched it go all the way down. It made a new low here. When I say a new low, I mean a new multi-month low, not a new all-time low, because that happened earlier, but a new multi-month, and then had a strong finish, of course, yesterday being the swoon day. So now I would say even this could be interesting over 15. If you just wanted to take a shot, I like doing this, is I like to probe once the consolidation on a reversal pattern confirms over 15, and you have a risk really to under 1383, which is the low that we had on October 2nd. So yeah, that would be Grow Generation, which has relative strength compared to all these others, CGC, and it's always good to look at, oh God, all of a sudden my mind is going to go completely blank here. Well, let's just look at the actual ETF, MJ.
Okay.
Very similar to what I just showed you with Canopy Growth. New multi-month low here, 1014, big day.
Was it Aurora that you were thinking of?
No, not Aurora. No, it's a much bigger company starting with a G, and I cannot think of it right now.
So how's that, Jane? You have a few ideas now?
Well, I like this idea better, Jane, is look at the actual ETF, because yesterday was an inside day. So even though, so now you really have a nice risk, let's say to under 10 to give it a little bit of room.
Yeah.
And what happens today, but if it takes out the high from the other day, 1083, that's an 83-cent risk. It's worth it. I would certainly not go in like gangbusters. But if you get an 83-cent risk and you say, well, at least maybe it can get back up near the 50-day moving average. That's nice. That's a nice little profit. 83-cent risk to make, maybe $1.50 or something like that, or at least take some profit there and raise your stop to no loss and see where it goes. But again, I think that this whole cannabis space could have some rally here in anticipation, but I wouldn't necessarily say that the election is a lock at this point. As we know, in 2016, everybody thought at this point that Hillary was a lock, and we know what happened there. So if you're making Biden administration trades, just always be careful. Now, let's just go back to the Modern Family for a second here. The regional banks have been the major lag. Yeah. And so now in the last couple of days, also in the face of, and by the way, I use regional banks as opposed to big banks because I think this is a better measure of the U.S. economy, because these are the smaller banks like your State Street banks that are within the communities of the rural communities of the United States, not your Bank of Americas and your Wells Fargos, et cetera.
Right.
And this too made a
new pop.
New multi-month low followed by an inside day, gap up the next day. There was your buy signal. And again, now we're looking at 40. So
Is the
it's
pop
just
in yields helping that sector out, and also that the yield curve is steepening a bit
a little bit,
during this
yes.
move? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. That's helping. I think that, we can go through each one, but let's just take a look at semiconductors because I think there's so
Okay.
much to cover. I want to get a couple of more things. So
Yeah,
you're
okay.
looking at semiconductors now. The semiconductors, of course, had made the new, this was a new all-time high here, and then had that reversal pattern down, which it made about a 10% move lower, which is exactly what you expect on these reversal tops and reversal bottoms, is about a 10% move. And now look at this, so interesting, tackling the high pretty much yesterday of that day, of the high of the day that started to go down. And of course, this was the Trump tweet swoon. So I wouldn't rule out tech completely at this point. But nonetheless, you could see further weakness here while you start to continue to see the rotation in some of those other sectors. So that's kind of what we're looking at. So let's move on to the commodities here, because my biggest prediction, and God, Dale, you know that I've been saying this now long before anybody else was saying this.
You were the first.
I was the first. Yes, I was the first.
God knew before you, but then you knew.
Absolutely, and maybe,
All right.
and maybe also Ray Dalio, but he is God. Yeah, so.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he was kind of on my page with this too, in terms of prediction that the dollar was going to have a swoon. Everybody that I saw on Twitter that I respect was so bullish the dollar. It was crazy. I was the only voice going, dollar's going down. And not only has it gone down, you can see that it had a nice little pop after it got pretty oversold. But now if we break down again under this 50-day moving average, and this is DXY, by the way, which is 93.27, I think that that little pop, that was about it. And now we can start looking at it. And the reason why is, look over here. This is an 80-month moving average. And this 80-month moving average, by the way, is really kind of like a business cycle. It goes way back on this dollar. It hasn't been below the 80-month really since 2011, 2012, and it broke it this year. So it really shows you that the whole cycle of the dollar, it could go up and down, but in terms of the whole cycle of the dollar, it's kind of broken.
Headwinds.
Yeah. So if this dollar continues to decline, and by the way, speaking of Ray Dalio, he's like looking at China investments now because the yuan has been starting to do much better, then this is where you're going to start to see your stagflation scenario, which doesn't matter if it's Trump or Biden, is a very, very difficult situation to deal with economically. How do you deal with it? You raise the rates, you kill the market. You don't raise the rates and inflation goes out of control. Cost of living's already gone up, make the dollar worth less. People are hurting even further. It's a real nightmare. It happened in the 70s. And that brings me back to sugar. Because sugar, believe it or not, even though oil was a part of it, that we have a different type of stagflation environment. And this is where I feel like sometimes shaking these people and going, wake up, life has changed. It's not an oil induced stagflation that we're having. It's a food induced stagflation that we're heading towards because of all the reasons why, not to mention, drought conditions around the world, but supply chain disruptions, lower labor force, overproduction for years that they reversed to try to get the prices up. And now all of a sudden there's a shortage. I mean, this is really going on. And in the 70s, sugar actually signaled before gold and silver that inflation was coming. And look at this now. This is now at a level. I mean, it was there earlier in the year, as you can see, but it's come back. And I think this has more room to the upside. This look at the longer term picture here. I mean, you could see this thing from really 2016 on, just did nothing and now is starting to come back. And I think this really merits, we've been long sugar for a long time, but the same thing with soybeans. And we're looking at ETFs just to make it easy. Soybeans, which is coming in, also had a huge move up. Wheat.
Yeah, all of them.
Huge move up. Corn.
Yeah.
Huge move up. And it's not too late. If you really want to continue to play, I would look here.
Just starting.
It's just starting. Exactly. Don't feel like you missed it if you're not long down here. Because look at this DBA chart. This is the agriculturals ETF. This is now flirting with the 50-week moving average. And also look at the monthly chart, total downtrend that is now reversed. It looks like this thing can actually really go. And you have a very tight risk. You know you're wrong, by the way. If it breaks
Under the
down
July lows, huh?
under the July lows, and also look at the what's happening here with the moving averages. We're about to get a golden cross. This has not been bullish in so many years that this would be a huge trend change too. So my
Did you hear about what's happening in China, Michelle?
Which
They're
part?
actually they've cut down the amount of food that families get. They're calling it like a soft famine.
Yeah,
So
they're calling it clean plate, the clean plate movement.
Oh, is that it? Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
no waste, and actually maybe they're preparing people for just, for a famine.
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. So
I mean, I don't think they have those, like we do, that Marie Osmond sells, and all those dietary foods you could order and have them come to your door.
yeah,
So
no, what they're
small
doing now,
meals.
right? But in restaurants right now, exactly that. In restaurants right now, you have to get only a half portion, and they want you to clean your plate. And it's not just for conservation, though. I mean, there has been a lot of waste that I've heard in China in terms of people eating out and what they order. So it's not, but it is indicative of what I'm talking about here.
Okay.
So
they're not doing that here in the U.S., are they? Clean plate.
I think here in the U.S. with our obesity problem, I don't think that's a big concern. So I just wanted to end with
what a blast. All
China.
Right.
China's not known for obesity.
Well, as a kid, my mom would say, Dale, finish your food. There are people starving in China.
Yes, my mother used to say the same thing to me. Of course, I used to say to her, go ahead.
Oh, Michelle, you're great.
All right. So anyway, I just want to end with oil, because the metrics of inflation, people should understand, is very heavy oil based. And so when you talk about, and when you see the metrics, especially by Powell, we want inflation to heat up. When you see it from some of the other analysts and macroeconomists who say that we're in a deflationary period, they're looking at oil. And if you look at oil, yeah, right. Oil is really reflecting all the issues that we've had, obviously oversupply, low demand, etc. But interesting, this also had kind of a weird spike low and then gap up. I wouldn't keep my eyes off of oil. I actually was long, just a small position. We did a probe half position. We wound up getting stopped out and losing money on that. And that's fine. I don't mind probing like that. I'll do that a lot, because when I catch it big. Right now, I'm completely aside, but I can tell you that if this thing actually cleared over these levels right here on the weekly chart,
yeah.
And anything could happen, by the way, to make oil go up. Even though alternative energy has completely blown this away, and people have spent more money on electricity and gas at a statistic high of 60 years, and that's another reason why technology and all energy has gone up so much. I wouldn't rule this out yet, because you can see if this can get over 30, and that's a exponential moving average right here, then this whole thing starts to look like a base, and we don't know. I actually read that in Europe, which obviously they're having huge problems in Europe right now in terms of the furloughs are ending, and what do they do, and maybe negative rates, which of course people say would be attractive to the dollar. I'm not necessarily so sure about that. Maybe a blip. But what people are saying is, hey, you want to get young men into the labor force? Start a war. I was like, wow. I hope that doesn't happen, but it's certainly start a war. You want to get young labor force employed, put them in the military. And the only way they'd go to the military is if there's a war. And I thought, oh my God, I mean, that is such an insidious way to think. But historically, it's not completely crazy.
How about in China when they had the one-child policy and a lot of younger men can't find wives?
Yeah, there are way more men than women in China.
Yeah.
That's a problem. Actually, it's funny. Let me just talk about China for 1 second,
Okay.
because I have been asked, yours truly, to speak at the Bogu Forum, which generally is in Beijing. Obviously, this year it's virtual. I will be the first woman ever in their 7th annual Boku Financial Forum to be a speaker this year. It's a great honor, and I am so yeah, I'm
They're
just so
they're lucky to have you, as far as
well.
I'm concerned. And I'm going to make a big push, and I brought your name up before, for our next summit. I don't know if you caught it, but we had Schwager there and a lot of pretty good people a week or so ago.
Mhm.
But I said, like I've told people, like before the interview, you're one of the best intramarket analysts I know.
Oh,
And the way
thank you,
you
Dale.
put the whole jigsaw puzzle together, I learn every time you come in. I get clarity by the end of the interview. So I do follow you, Michele. So how about for people that are listening and will see your video, how they could
Oh,
follow you besides at Market Minute on Twitter? Why don't you show your website?
oh, great. Okay, let's get the website going here. Hold on. Take me 1 second to get it up. Mm, 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 mm. We're actually in the process of a major redesign of the website. But here is the website. Market Beat is where you see our dailies. And I have a person working with me now, Forrest, who's helping with the dailies. And we've been training him, and he's doing amazingly well, a young guy, and we love him. So now you'll see his name around. Also, though, if you want to see some of my media appearances, everything that I've been doing gets posted here. I've been all over the media lately, which has been a lot of fun, a lot of fun. But anyway, so marketgauge.com, you can sign up for at Market Beat, not only my daily, but also Keith Schneider, my husband and CEO. He does a weekly outlook with a video. This is all free. And then if you ever want to look at some of our products and services, you just have to click here and you can see. And we have a live chat page. So if you have any questions, Mary, our customer service person, is amazing at getting back to everybody. So that's it. And yes, thank you, Dale. It's always a pleasure to be with you in the
Yeah,
morning.
really, but it's great to hear your voice. It makes me feel like I'm home. All
That's so
right.
sweet. All right.
So, and someone says you look like Joan Jett. I hope you.
Oh,
Uh,
interesting.
you
I used to
you
hear
rock, Michele. You rock, huh? Uh,
Joan Jett. Yeah, we're probably contemporaries.
yeah.
Shh. I didn't say that, did I? Okay.
All right.
All right.
Well, really, thanks a lot for all the great ideas, and
Thank,
really,
thank you.
I'll get a hold of you, and if you still have time for us, we'll book something in December. Okay.
Sounds great. And you take care of yourself, Dale. Stay healthy.
All right. Thank you, Michele. Everyone, that's Michele Schneider at Market Minute on Twitter. Go to her website. She's one of the best intermarket analysts and a great trader. You notice how she waits for the market to prove itself before she puts her money on it. So that's a wrap. Everyone, we'll see you tomorrow. And don't just count your pips or your sugar cubes or whatever you feel is valuable in the material world. Count your blessings, and we'll see you tomorrow. You're welcome. Adios.